Hey peoples, this is another movie review of Let It Snow. As always, I want to say thank you for listening, that really means a lot to me. And on to the review. So Let It Snow is a Netflix movie, and in the Netflix description it says something about a snowstorm affecting people's lives. That's really not the case, they barely mention the snowstorm. Basically, it's a movie about different groups of people going through their own relationship drama and how that connects to the rest of their lives. And that's the movie. So, first thing I have to say is that I just simply enjoyed this movie. It's not perfect, it has its highs and lows. If it was in a theater, I wouldn't run out and watch it, but it's the perfect movie for Netflix. So before I dive into the story, I have to talk about one of my favorite parts about this movie. I really only have two favorite parts, not to say that everything else is bad, but these are my two favorite things. The first one, I don't know if the director sat everybody down and said, okay, we're gonna act from our faces. Yes, I know you usually act from your faces, but I want you to really act from your faces. Use your eyeballs, your lips, your eyebrows, every single section of your face. I want it to react this way and that way. Because you notice it in this film and it is the best. Usually I'd say, oh, it's that one person who is really doing a great job of reacting and interacting with the person they're with. But there are multiple characters in this movie. I don't know if the casting agent specifically hired people who have great control over their facial expressions, or if the director specifically told them to do these things. But it's great, I loved it. Just pay attention to people's facial reactions, even their eyes, all of that. It's used perfectly in this film. And the subject naturally leads into acting, so I will say that everyone does a pretty good job acting. Not everyone pulls off all of their emotional moments, but for the most part, everyone does a pretty good job. I was invested in every single character because the actors brought these characters to life. All of these people felt real, and I wanted to hang out with a couple of them. And a couple of other ones I would want completely distant from me because they would be super annoying. But I enjoyed every single acting performance. Oh, and one more thing, there is a little girl in this movie. I looked her up. Her name is Journey Christine. This little girl has one scene in the movie, but she is freaking amazing. Please put her in more things. She was such a natural, and little kid actors are really starting to show out. I'm gonna need you other little kids to step it up because you got some competition. Now to talk about my second favorite thing in this film, the writing. The writing in this movie was so much fun. And I'm not talking about the overall story, but the small humorous conversations placed throughout this movie are what make the movie great. It's the best part about the whole movie. They are just small conversations that don't necessarily have to do with the overall film, but they're fun to listen to and they give you an insight into the way that specific character thinks. Now, I won't say that every single moment of writing is perfect. There were a couple of moments that made me raise my eyebrow. For instance, there are a couple of moments where characters will say something that seems kind of deep and too deep for that specific situation, and it didn't really connect with what was going on at that moment. Also, near the end, when one character gives a very good emotional speech about their feelings, the other character responds with, "You are always the one." Now that sounds sweet, but in comparison to what the other person just said, it feels like the writers got kind of lazy and basically said, ditto, I feel the exact same way. So it's not perfect, but overall I enjoyed the writing. The story of the movie is overall really good. It bounces from pairs of characters to other pairs of characters. I personally didn't care about every single one of them. If I'm not mistaken, there are about 5 storylines going on, and I wish the movie would have maybe taken out 2 of them and focused on the more interesting storylines. And I feel if we actually took some of the storylines out and focused on the more interesting ones, we would have been able to learn more information about the characters of the more interesting storylines. For example, one storyline has to do with a celebrity who is a singer and he's passing through the town, and a girl that lives in the town. Now we get to hear about her story and her background, but we don't get to hear about his. And her information is so deep and emotional and you connect with it, and they tell you that his life is not all rosy and that he might have drama with his family, but they never tell you what's going on. We know everything about her and nothing about him. But speaking of the celebrity singer, the movie made him so confusing to me. I could not for the life of me figure out what level of fame he was, and I don't think the movie knew what level of fame he was. In the beginning, they start off with our singer and he's on a radio station giving an interview and singing. And you're like, okay, so he is famous enough to be on a radio station. And then while another character is waiting in line for something, they look up and see a full building-sized poster of this guy. So they're telling me that he's super famous. But he'll walk on the train and no one's around him. He doesn't have security. He walks into a diner establishment, which is one of the main locations in this movie, and one person is like, oh my gosh, it's you, and they're shocked. But then they show us no other scenes of other people in the restaurant freaking out about him actually being there. They do show a couple of other girls coming into the diner and seeing him and being like, oh my gosh, that's him. but he walks around pretty freely and his celebrityness only pops up a few times, and it seems that his fame wasn't consistent throughout the movie, and that was a little bit bothersome. But back to the storyline and the relationships, like I said, I wish they would have took out a couple of the weaker ones and just focused on the stronger storylines, the more interesting storylines with the more interesting characters. One super annoying thing to me was the music in this movie. Not the actual music choice, but the fact that it was blaring. The characters are talking at a certain level and the music will blare over them like it's a music video. It's a different song each time and it took me out of the film. And some other random points that I want to get to before wrapping up. There is a voiceover at the beginning and end of the movie. It felt kind of pointless. Another random thing is that there is a character that cuts his chest while he is shirtless. And then when he puts a shirt on, all of a sudden he's bleeding through his shirt. And someone says, "Are you bleeding?" And then he goes and gets a towel. And instead of lifting up his shirt and putting the towel on the cut, he holds the towel to the outside of his shirt for some reason. Didn't understand that one. But that's all, peoples. I really like this movie. I do suggest watching it. The characters are really good. The acting is really good. The conversations are the best. Love them. And overall, it was an enjoyable time. Just so you know, there are 2 extra scenes. There's one after a couple of credits and then one way at the end after all of the credits. So just fast forward to those sections. But that's it, peoples. Thank you for listening. Please do me a favor. Like, thumbs up, subscribe, comment. Love the comments. Go back and forth. We can talk about this movie forever. And you can tell me which relationships you liked and which relationships you didn't like. Specifically, which person got on your nerves because they were kind of annoying. But yeah. Please continue to have a great day. God bless. I'll talk to you tomorrow.